So there was a very, very big gear announcement that happened in the middle of this week that definitely had all of the guitar players in my world quite a Twitter.
Mine too.
And that was the announcement of the Headrush Prime guitar multi-effect amp model vocal processor unit.
Yep.
Which is quite a name.
It's a mouthful. It's a floorful.
It is both of those things. So the TLDR is that this is basically Headrush's full-size amp modeler form factor solution.
Yep.
Up to this point, Headrush was making kind of smaller units, some that were a bit more specialized. Their whole claim to fame was that they had this touch screen and kind of
their UI is supposed to be way better than anybody else's. And looking at it, it's pretty good.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
You touch things and that's all well and good.
Drag them around.
Yeah. But this is their basically like, this is our Cadillac. This is the full Monty.
And it's squarely aimed at the Helix.
100%.
Yeah.
It is very similar form factor.
Well, it's even wider. Did you see that? Did you compare the numbers?
I did not.
It's 3 inches wider than the Helix floor.
Wow.
It's 5 inches wider than the Helix LT. It's deeper. Actually, it's a little shallower. Like its height is a little less, but it's notably wider than anything Helix.
So, we basically found out about it. It drops on Sweetwater, and then every guitar creator and their mom drops their video about it.
Yeah, because they've had demo units for 3 weeks, something.
And so they ran it through its paces. I watched Steve Sterlacci's tutorial because I follow him for Helix stuff, and he's just a good guy to know. And I felt like he did a really good job of kind of like explaining it and how it worked. And it sounded fine.
Yeah.
They were just running through presets. They didn't really have a lot of chance to do custom patches or anything like that. And it sounded workable. It was a totally serviceable, example of these things. I'd gig it
all day long.
A lot of the stuff is kind of retreading things that other companies have done before. Nothing from the kind of the wide angle of specs makes this one much more unique than any of the other modelers. But
there's one core disagreement I have with that.
Okay.
And that is the vocal stuff.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like, just zoomed out, you look at this thing and you're like, yeah, it looks like all of the other ones.
Yeah, okay, fair.
But as you start getting into the details, there are some very unique value propositions that nobody is doing.
Correct.
That I thought were really, really impressive.
Yeah.
The one that Dan was bringing in is that it actually has dedicated vocal effects for a vocal chain.
Yep.
It's handled completely separately from the amp modeler stuff, and it includes Antares Autotune. They've got the actual like licensed stuff in the box.
Yep. Yeah, and vocal harmony effects that are driven harmonically from the guitar input. So I've always hoped that the Quad Cortex will come up with this sort of thing, because it has a mic in and it has a guitar in, and I could get rid of a lot of gear, frankly, if the Quad Cortex would do the vocal harmonies that I need my TC Helicon pedal to do. It'd be great. It'd be, God, my life would be so much easier if I could just standardize on that pedal. But so far that hasn't come. But the Headrush does seem like it has that. Now that would be a step back to a much larger form factor for me, which I don't know. I don't know if I would do that, but to be able to run vocal effects and guitar effects through the same box, that's very attractive.
Well, not only that, it has a 20-minute looper.
Yeah, that too.
And the looping function, Headrush made a dedicated loop board.
Yeah.
Which, I'm assuming they took all of the things that they had done with that one and found better ways to produce it, and kind of it became a part of this thing.
Yeah.
And, with the dynamic scribble strips, like it does, like if you are a solo acoustic performer and you don't have a floor solution that can do all of these things, this is an absolute no-brainer.
And at $12.99, it undercuts pricing on Helix floor. It's competitive with Helix LT. It blows Quad Cortex out of the water. The price is, for me, among the killer values of this thing.
It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Now, it's also got some cool functional things that none of the other ones are doing. The fact that you can double tap on any of your preset buttons means that you have way more options as far as like switching things out and just customization, way more options. And they call their presets rigs. And there's kind of a snapshot-esque kind of way of changing sounds out, but I think this one goes a little bit further. I was really impressed with the general functionality features that I saw. It's a very impressive looking unit.
Yeah.
But it is not without its shortcomings. Personally, it is outrageously big.
Yeah.
Like, it's big.
Yeah.
Considering I had that crazy pedal train PT3 Pro, and this thing would literally take up the entire thing.
Yeah.
The prospect of going back to a rig that size just does not appeal to me in any conceivable way.
Right.
The biggest one for me personally, though, is the lack of any sort of computer editing ability.
Right. Their case that they're making here is that the UI on their touchscreen makes that unnecessary. And I'm not sure I agree.
I'm not sold on that prospect. But there is some cool stuff that it does do that other ones. So they have the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in it, which is pretty much unprecedented in this form factor and this kind of thing.
I'll say Quad Cortex has Wi-Fi and has a cloud service as part of it, but it doesn't have Bluetooth.
Yeah. Now, of course, the one feature that everybody's talking about is the cloning functionality, where it is taking some of the stuff that the Kemper really kind of revolutionized.
Right.
And yes-anding it, where you have the ability to not just model or profile an amp, but you can like do an entire rig down to the pedals. And apparently one of the things that they were saying is that like it handles fuzz pedals really well.
Yeah.
Which is something that apparently a lot of these guys can do.
Yeah. None of those cloning or analysis things, including Quad Cortex, can do fuzz pedals because they're too nonlinear. They're messier than an algorithm can really understand. But apparently these guys have cracked it. So that's cool. Now, is that something would that be a use case for you for this thing?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
To me, it's a little gimmicky, but I understand why it exists because I think ultimately what these kinds of features and functions are built for are for people who are being pulled from using full-size rigs.
Yes.
And the prospect of being able to say, here, you can take all of your stuff and put it into this box.
Right.
And for people who are very enamored with their gear, I think that is a value add. For a person who's been entrenched in the modeling ecosystem for almost 5 years now, I don't care.
Yeah, I haven't used an amp since I came back to gigging 10 years ago. I haven't used an amp.
Yeah.
I have nothing to model.
And I have 2 amps that I really like, but I have presets that sound just as good, if not better, than they do.
Yeah.
I have a Rocker Verb 50 Mark I, but I also have the Rocker Verb 100 model in my Helix, and it sounds really gnarly.
Yeah.
And there's not a sound in that amp that is worth carting a 75-pound rig again.
Exactly.
There just isn't.
Exactly.
Will I crank it up at home when the mood strikes me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think cloning, while it is a really cool way of utilizing this kind of technology, to me personally, it's not a value add.
Yeah.
But I think with the price point, with the feature set, I think they are going to sell a ton of these.
For sure. I think it's going to be a winner.
Headrush has kind of been a bit of a fringe element in this world, and they've released products and they've done okay. And some people use them. Some people really don't like them. I think this is the one that puts them squarely into competition with the heavy hitters.
Yes.
And if it is able to do all of the things that it says that it can do on the level that the other ones are, I think this is a huge win for them.
And the content creators who've had preview units and putting out demos of them, they're very positive about it. It seems like it's fully everything it claims to be. So God bless. I'm glad that there's another player in the space. And my hope is that it will push Quad Cortex, which I am all in on right now, to reconsider the prioritization of their vocal chain, which was the thing they said they were going to do to begin with. Mm-hmm. Their delivery of the promised upgrades after launch has not been as promised. It's been slower than they said. Yeah. Particularly, they are famous for plugins, desktop plugins that do guitar effects really, really, really well. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be, those will be ported to the Quad Cortex. You'll be able to use your plugins like that. That still hasn't happened. So it's been over a year since that device came out, and they're well behind on the timeline that they announced about that. And I get it. I'm a software guy. Stuff gets late. It's harder than you think. That's all fine. But then something like this comes out, and hopefully they start to feel some competitive pressure and start to feel like they need to deal with some of the undelivered promises. And I say all that having gigged it last weekend and gigging it again next weekend, and quite happy with the box. So it's not going to take me away from it, but I do have hopes for its future.
Yeah. When we went through and was kind of watching it, the Patreon Slack was just like everybody was talking about it and just couldn't get enough information.
Except for Mike Schulte, who said, "Are you guys done geeking out about guitar stuff? Can I come back into the gear channel now?" Fair, Mike. Fair.
Yeah, if you are a drummer, you just go ahead and throw this podcast into the ocean.
This episode's not for you.
NAMM's in a couple of weeks. Like it's just going to be rough.
That one won't be for you either.
For you guys. Yeah. But what I was saying after going through all of the features and the reviews and stuff, I was like, the gauntlet's been thrown. Mm-hmm. Headrush has walked in and said, "Here you go.
Yep.
This is what is expected now."
Yeah.
And as a person who has a modeler and has really enjoyed my experience with it, this just throws more innovation into the marketplace. And I think will, like you said, it'll motivate the other manufacturers to up their game. And ultimately, like, everybody benefits when a product like this comes out, because any product that pushes the envelope just inspires its competition to rise to the occasion. And I'm super stoked because all of the features that I talked about that I thought were really neat, I would love to have in my unit, and feels like something that could happen.
Yep.
So
yep.
I'm really excited to see how it lands. There was definitely a lot of talk about the Quad Cortex when it was released, that all demos that were done were very locked down and you can only show certain things. I'm curious to see how this works in the real world as a physical product and not just as a kind of locked down demo unit. So time will tell, but if it does half of what they say it does well enough, I think it's a slam dunk product.
Yep.
And I look forward to seeing what it does out in the marketplace.
For sure.